All right. So my senior capstone project, I focused on attentional focus, just kind of like the purpose behind it, what it is, and how it's implemented within teaching and coaching. So what is attention focus? Attention focus refers to the conscious effort a performer gives through thought while performing a certain movement or motor pattern. So you see this a lot with coaching or teaching an individual some kind of movement pattern. Attention focus is broken down into two different types: external focus and internal focus. So what is external focus? External focus involves the individual and their environment around them. So it involves teaching that is intended on the movement effect or the outcome of the individual's environment. So example cues of stuff like when you talk about like sprinting would be like pushing the ground away, or throwing it through the catcher, or get off the ground like it's hot lava. Stuff that incorporates using their environment, focusing on their environment and the movement pattern off of their environment. On the flip side, internal focus involves them within themselves. So talking about like their body parts and the movement itself within their body. So stuff like snap your hips through the bar, extend your knee, take your hands to the ball, things that are more like subconscious, more thinking about the movement within their body versus their environment around them. So with learning while optimizing performance, so out of being a coach and being a teacher, the most important question is how can I get them to do this, whatever movement pattern, motor skill, to the best of their ability. And so this has been a highly researched topic like the last 10, 15 years. And the research has actually shown a lot of information that both the researchers and the practitioners are kind of eye-opening on. And so research has shown through the studies that they try to focus on three different aspects: movement effectiveness, movement efficiency, and movement kinematics. And so from the research that I had found, looking at external versus internal focus cueing, with movement effectiveness, one of the main topics was balance. So the use of stability meter, balance meter, biodex, materials like that. It measured the effectiveness of following the instructions on those machines, and it showed that external focus cues performed better results compared to internal focus cues. It also used accuracy as well, so just like throwing a dart against a dartboard or trying to be accurate, hitting a target, as well as like putting. So tasks requiring the individual to hit a specific target. Again, results show that external focus cues produced better results than internal focus cues.
So what was the cue that they would use for that, for targeting or for effectiveness?
So for accuracy or?
Yeah, for either one, like give me an example of what they'd use for.
So for accuracy, they would say like hit the bullseye. So they're focusing on the ring within it versus like getting their elbow up or like releasing from the hand.
Okay.
So movement efficiency. So they're looking at how efficient they are throughout the movement now with external and internal focus cues. So with muscular activity, they use EMG testing. So they use like bicep curls, isometric force production, standing long jump. So they're measuring to see the amount of muscle recruitment with external and internal focus cues. And again, external focus cues produced better muscle efficiency compared to internal focus cues. Maximum force production, so they're looking at vertex, so like a vertical jump, dynameter, or a jump distance. Again, so they're measuring to see the amount of total force that was produced in those tests. Again, external focus cues produced better results more than internal focus cues. And last, they looked at speed and endurance, so like swimming, sprints, biking, any type of like free rack weight exercise like a barbell, like a squat or bench press. So they're measuring the rate of completion, so how fast they can get it done, as well as the duration, so like how long they can withstand that endurance. Again, external focus cues had better results than internal focus cues. Lastly, they're looking on movement kinematics. So these studies have shown that external focus cues provide better results than the use of internal focus cues. So again, the dart throwing, focusing on the flight of the dart itself versus telling them to like raise the elbow or like extend at the elbow. or flex the wrist. Rowing, there was a study with rowing, and they looked at the blade level during the recovery period of the row versus the hands. So they cued having a flat blade versus flat hands. And golfers' X factor, which is, they use that as a form of measuring hip and shoulder separation. So for that, they use pushing against the left side of the ground as an external focus cue versus shifting the weight forward into their front leg. And so a lot of these research studies show the same patterns of external focus cues producing better results than internal focus cues. And so it brings to the question, like, how is this possible? Like, why does this pattern keep following? And so a lot of the research referred to the common coding theory, which according to this theory, there's a common brain representation for perception and action. Some people didn't believe that there was a direct relation between perception and action, but because of this theory, they feel that there's a direct relation between it. So perception is a means to action, as well as actions are a mean to perception. So meaning, if an individual has more perception or like has a better understanding of what is being asked for them, or a better understanding of like what they're looking for, the action will produce better results. And so they also looked at the flip side of why weren't internal focus cues producing better results. And that led to this hypothesis of the constrained action hypothesis, where they believe that the internal attention focus cues were actually harming the individual compared to the external focus cues, because it was causing them to interfere with their body's natural movements. So when we look at examples like breathing, we do it automatically, we don't have to think about it. But at the moment we start thinking about it, all of a sudden our breathing patterns change. And so they saw the same type of pattern where using like sprint mechanics or shooting or throwing a dart, if they're thinking more internally, they're actually causing a delay with that automatic motor pattern, and so it's actually slowing them down. And so they're thinking more about making sure they're doing the movements correctly and feeling it correctly versus worrying about just more like the outcome or the results, as well as like the external focus cues. And so again, so it causes a constraint on the motor system by interfering with automatic control processes. And so how do you utilize this info? So not all athletes can be trained the same way. Some athletes do prefer internal focus cues and show better results with it, and some prefer external focus cues. And so some research have shown that highly advanced athletes actually perform better with internal focus cues compared to external focus cues. So a lot of the research was saying that like novice or intermediate athletes are better off using external focus cues because they don't have those like movement patterns or motor patterns set in stone yet. They don't have that like muscle memory. And so being able to focus on the environment and the outcome would take away from feeling that like robotic feeling of I gotta look like this or I have to look like this. So the reason why internal focus cues were better with the highly advanced motor pattern athletes were because they've done it for so long, they don't need that external focus of the outcome. They know what the outcome is already. They need more of that internal feel to make sure like, hey, am I feeling this in my hips correctly, or am I feeling this in my shoulder correctly? And so in the end, you want to choose the best cues that work for the individual. Research has shown novices benefit more from the external focus compared to the internal focus. And so when providing cues, be direct with the individual. You don't have, like, say what you need to say, like that's it, be clear and concise with it. But it's also important to know what type of cues you use and what words you use in the cues. So as an example of focus on the markers versus focus on your hands, just that one word difference makes the cue difference of markers being the external and hands being the internal. And that can be a big difference between what type of results you get. And so I had a link here, kind of just summarizing everything that I just went over about what attention focus is, external versus internal, how it's incorporated, and how external focus cues are better off for the novices and beginners who are learning and building that motor pattern compared to the advanced motor patterns. And then these are just some other references talking about just like the dart and the rowing and stuff like that. But you guys have any questions?
So how do we use it here? So I think already kind of do some of these things that you're talking about? So
Mhm.
is there anything that you've seen so far that we can make an adjustment on, or any like put into practice kind of take home points?
I think we could benefit, I know we've talked about it before, trying to build that connection between out in the field and in the weight room. So things like feeling like their swing, or giving cues of like throwing it through the wall, like an example like the hip toss, med ball hip toss, feeling like they're throwing it through the wall versus like trying to tell them to like lead with the hip, or like getting the lead leg block, stuff like that. Again, all these, especially the guys down here now, they are young. A lot of them haven't been in the weight room before. And so trying to find cues that work best for them, I think external focus cues would be good. I know it's real easy for us to pick internal focus cues just because it's more of, we have the movement patterns down, right? We've been lifting weights for a while, so we know that feel. But being able to take a step back and to be into their shoes and know, like, I've never really done this exercise before, finding ways to get them to do the motor pattern without thinking about their body and awareness, and just thinking more about the environment around them.
Cool. Sounds good.
Really good topic, I like the topic a lot. Especially like that thought slide, where how to utilize that information.
Mhm.
But what you talked about was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think end of the day, like I said, like all athletes train differently as far as like what works for them. And so you might have a guy who needs that internal cueing. So it's like, okay, we just can't give him external because he doesn't have that spatial awareness, or he doesn't understand like what we're looking for. But if we tell him like, hey, like drive through your heel, or like extend your knee, extend your hips, and he understands the body and like how the body works, that might work better for him. It's like compared to a guy who has never been in the weight room before.
I think something that we can use too is like biofeedback mechanisms, like if the guy's doing wings or clamp or cone touches or what have you. By putting a ball on their back, that's an external focus attention. They need to balance that ball and keeps their hips stable, right? Like, so things like that, you're going to derive these control changes without having to really do a whole lot of explainative positions. They figure it out, right?
Yeah.
When you give them certain constraints. So.
And especially a game out, like because of how fast the actions are, you talk about like throwing and swinging. So that if they sit there and they think internally all the time of like, my hands have to do this, or like my hip has to do this, they're already slowing their body down. They're already at a disadvantage. Everything just has to be reaction and focusing more on the external side compared to how they're trying to feel on the inside.